God damn, we back at it today. It's gonna be a little bit more abstract. The last few weeks we've been talking about camera gear in relation to a couple of weeks ago. It was talk about the Sigma lenses, the EF Sigma art lenses from the past decade that they were releasing, the OGs. Last week I talked about the Samyang 85 or 85 millimeter lens. Today's gonna be a little bit more abstract. Obviously, those were more specific in the gear that I have. Today's a little bit more abstract, talking about the 50 millimeter focal length and why it's personally my favorite. I've been doing photography, videography for the last 7 years now, which is absolutely insane. I started off in my sophomore year of college. That was back in the spring of 2018. Now here we are in the fall of 2025. So I'm recording this is September the 21st of Sunday, quarter to 8 p.m. And yeah, just going over the course of time, the first few years that you're doing photography, videography, you figure things out, figure out what's your favorite, what you do like, what you don't like, and you just practice. And then as you go on to get more gear, obtain more cameras, more lenses, microphones, lighting, whatever the case may be, you just find out what's your favorite, what works for you, what's your style, etc., etc. And one of those paths you go on is, what is your favorite focal length? Obviously, when you start off, most people start off on kit lenses, then maybe they go on to the nifty 50 millimeter, the cheap lenses like 1.8 that many camera manufacturers come from Canon, Sony, Lumix, Nikon, etc. And then you just grow from there, and you just figure out, okay, I got the 50 millimeter. You go from there, maybe try the 35. Okay, maybe try the 85. Maybe try the 100. Maybe try the 135, etc. As you go along, you get a zoom lens, and you just go on from there. But then you just find out, like, 50 millimeters is my favorite. 35 millimeters is my favorite. No, 85 millimeters is my favorite. Sometimes you're like, okay, this works for this situation, this works for this situation. I need this for events. I need this for portraits. I need this for different videos and stuff like that. You just figure things out. You just go down this path. And that path led me from the figuring out that 50 millimeters is my favorite focal length. So in this video, I'm just going to talk about why 50 millimeters is my favorite focal length. So the first lens I bought outside of the kit lens, obviously, that came with the Canon T3i, which I still have, which you can't really see because it's tucked in way back there, but I'll forever keep that camera, the Canon T3i. That's what I first bought. But the first lens I bought outside of the kit lens that came with it was the 50mm 1.8. Thoroughly enjoyed that lens. Obviously, it was a cheap lens. It was like $100-$200. You could probably get it used for even cheaper nowadays, depending on like if it's the EF version or RF version, or whatever the camera manufacturer do have now is. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that thing because the 1.8 aperture was just so low. The crispy, blurry background, creamy background. The first time experiencing that, because obviously you come from the kit lens, it's like a 3.5 to a 5.6 roughly. But that 1.8 was hitting. But then as you go over the course of time, you realize that that lens is not as sharp as it can be, because obviously it's $200. It's cheaply made. The glass is not the best. So you're like, okay, let me go down to a 1.4 aperture lens. Let me buy something more expensive. That's why I went down. I bought, and then I also was like, let me try something else. I love this 50 millimeter. Let me try 35. I hear people raving about 35 millimeter primes, especially when it comes to the Sigma 1.4, which was the lens that I eventually bought in 2021. Was the Sigma Art 35 millimeter 1.4. And I picked it up and I'm like, I thoroughly enjoyed this. The 1.4 is even better than the 1.8. The lens is even better because it's sharper glass, etc. Better build quality. It's a little bit heavy. The autofocus is a little bit loud, but it hits. The photos, the videos, it creates, it's hit. But over the course of time, I'm like, 35 millimeters. It's just too wide. In the depth of field, it's just not hitting. The focal length is just not hitting as much as I love the 50 millimeter. But I'm like, let me try at 85. Let me go down a rabbit hole. Let me try out the 85, because the 85, I want that blurry background that I had from the 50 millimeter. The 1.8 probably wasn't it. The 35 millimeter with 1.4 probably just went. Let me try 85. Let me go to the opposite extreme end. Let me try out the 85 millimeter. So that's when I bought the Samyang back in 2021. And let me try out the 85 millimeters, 1.4. That bokeh. Oh my God, that background's going to absolutely melt. And sure enough, it absolutely melted. The background was just gone. The photos were still crisp, but I was like, it's so limiting. It don't give me enough space. Like, I gotta have so much room between the desk, between whoever I'm shooting, whatever I'm shooting. Especially when I create a lot of content in this room, I'm just like, 85 millimeters is so limiting because it's just an extreme focal length. It creates great images. I love it for portraits when I do portraits every now and again, and I use it. I'm like, yeah, this thing is perfect for it. Especially like the distortion on people's faces is so perfect. Outside of 35 millimeters, a little bit, if you get too close, it's a little bit too distorted. If you get wide, you get too much of the background. So it's like a difficult balance. And that's when I returned to the 50mm focal length. That's when I was like, 35 is too wide, 85 is too close. You don't have enough space. Even though the bokeh is crazy, it's just not the perfect balance. So I guess I gotta return. I guess I gotta return back to the 50mm focal length. And that's sure enough what I did. I bought this Sigma R 50mm 1.4 back in 2023, the beginning of 2023. And the first few photos, the first few portrait sessions I had with him, like, this is the one. This is the one. This is everything I dreamed of. I don't know. I did experimentation. I did with my experimentation phase with 35mm, even with the 85mm. I'm like, 50mm was where my home was at, and just as I kept on using them, like, yep, 50mm is my home. And to put things in perspective, how science, let me put some little bit of science behind it. If you use our good old friend at ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT, what's the equivalent eye focal length that the eyes see compared to our camera lenses that we use, and it wasn't exact. There's no exact thing, because obviously there's little differences between cameras, the sensors, the lenses themselves is not always exactly 35. It could be like 36, not exactly 50. It could be like 51, 49, etc. But the closest to the eye perspective is somewhere roughly in between 40 to 50mm, closer to 50 most of the time. So it checks out. But nonetheless, the reason why I really thoroughly enjoyed the 50mm as I went through the story of going through the timeline, going through the different lenses, is that it's just a great balance. It's a great balance between the 35mm focal length and 85mm focal length, where it's just perfect, it's just right. Shout out to Goldilocks, the good old Goldilocks story. It was too wide, it was too close. It's just right. It's right in the Goldilocks zone where it is. You can get enough depth of field because it's 50mm. So it's like a medium focal length. It's a perfect balance where it's not too wide, not too close. So you get relatively close to your subject without the distortion being looking all crazy. But you don't have to be further away from the subject where you gotta get different perspective. You want to get more full body, you gotta be further away. You want to get close up. You don't have to get too close. Whereas the 35mm has more distortion. It has too much of the background. Maybe you don't want too much of the background, but you gotta move your feet even closer than you will need to be. Then you like closer to your person you're shooting, etc. It's just the perfect balance. Just the perfect balance between the 35mm and 85mm focal length, from the storytelling of like the background, how much back you want to have, the depth of field you want to create. 35mm doesn't have too much depth of field. The 85 has too much. And then the distortion that it creates in the image is just sometimes the distortion is just too much for the 35mm, and like it's too like perfect with the 85mm. And once again, 50mm is perfect. It's just right. Shout out to Goldilocks once again. So I just thoroughly enjoyed the focal length of 50mm. It's just perfect for me. Obviously, case by case, I'm not always going to use it. Sometimes I have to use a 35mm if I need more room. Sometimes I have to use the 85mm if I want just want it perfect. Like I said, I tend to use my Samyang 85mm for portraits because the distortion just perfect. It's just right. But sometimes, old faithful, old reliable, the 50mm just creates my home. I should have looked this up before recording. I probably should have looked up like the numbers. Like you go on Lightroom where you can search up like specific focal length. So like how many photos did you take or how many photos did you have saved that's at a specific focal length. Obviously there's a lot of differences if you have a zoom lens, but all else fails. Even though I've had this 50mm for a few years now, I know that I have a lot of photos on that thing. I have a lot of photos. Also, I'm recording on a 24mm, and this goes into the hand-to-hand. Like, it depends on the situation. So obviously, I'm recording on the 24mm just because I wanted to include more of the backgrounds, a little bit more distortion. This is a corner shot. Obviously, I want to have more of the background so you can see my setup and everything like that. But if I just had to go pick one lens, if I just had to pick one focal length, it would just always be the 50mm focal length because it's just so perfect. It's just right. And shout out to Goldilocks once again. It's just right. It's just perfect. It's the balance between the 35 and the 85mm focal length. So, and then of course you can get the 24 focal length prime. You get 100mm macro lenses are out there. 135. You want the extreme portrait lenses. 7200s. Like all of these focal lengths I do have, and I use them case by case. But it's just like if I had to pick one. If there's one that had to call old reliable, old faithful, it would just have to be 50mm. So, if you leave a video, I got more content like this always coming soon. So please subscribe. If you enjoy this more of an abstract, more storytelling type of video, definitely comment that down below. I definitely enjoyed going down memory lane, talk about my experience with camera gear and buying different things and figuring things out was personally my favorite. And yeah, definitely gonna do stuff more like this in the future. So obviously, I'm gonna do more gear videos as I come in and make sure if it comes up in a situation in which it fits right for the topic I am and the content I'm creating at the time. But yeah, the 50mm focal length, I love it. I just love it so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.